You know what ancient Rome and modern metropolises have in common? Traffic jams, high-rise buildings, fast food, and municipal problems. The only difference is that Romans solved them without asphalt, electricity, or the internet. And sometimes their solutions were more ingenious than ours. Imagine this. You wake up in a six-story building, take a hot shower, buy breakfast at a corner diner, commute to work along a wide paved road past libraries and gyms. Sounds familiar? This is just a description of an ordinary morning for a resident of Rome 2,000 years ago. We're used to thinking of our ancestors as club-wielding people living in caves. But reality is shocking. Many technologies we pride ourselves on today were invented millennia ago. Vending machines? Yes, they existed. Automatic doors? Of course. Robots? That too. And engineering solutions often surpassed modern ones in elegance and durability. And if you think this is an exaggeration, then what would you say about this? Take Egyptian pharaoh Ptolemy IV. In 222 BCE, this ruler decided, let's build an aircraft carrier. Of course, there were no airplanes then, but the ship turned out to be of corresponding dimensions. The Tessera Contares, as this wonder was called, stretched 130 meters in length. For comparison, it's like placing two modern Boeing 737s nose to nose. The ship's height reached 22 meters, as tall as a six-story building. Imagine the reaction of enemy sailors when this floating building emerged from the sea mist. The crew numbered more than 7,000 people, 4,000 rowers, 400 sailors, and nearly 3,000 warriors on deck. The structure's weight approached 4,000 tons. But how do you make such a behemoth move? Historians still rack their brains over this. Modern reconstructions show the oars were arranged at different levels, at various angles, like feathers of a giant bird. Synchronizing the work of 4,000 rowers required iron discipline and precise commands. One mistake, and the ship would turn into an uncontrollable pile of wood. The Tessera Contares was not just transport, but a psychological weapon. 7 powerful rams with metal tips could pierce any port defense. When such a behemoth charged forward, propelled by the force of thousands of people, enemy ships would shatter into splinters. Giant long-range catapults were positioned on deck. True, many believe the ship was built more for prestige than for war. Just as modern billionaires buy super yachts, Ptolemy IV wanted to show the world Egypt's might. Practicality took a back seat. The main thing was to make everyone gasp in awe. But if Ptolemy IV was a publicist, then what would you say about a real madman? Roman Emperor Caligula. Around 40 CE, he ordered the construction of 2 ships on small Lake Nemi that surpassed modern billionaires' super yachts in luxury. Each vessel reached 75 meters in length with a width of up to 30 meters, the size of a football field. But size wasn't the main thing. Inside the first ship was a real floating palace, marble finishing, alabaster baths, hot and cold water supply systems, floor heating, exquisite mosaics. The second ship was a floating temple where Caligula played at being a living god. Caligula's ships resembled an ancient Disneyland. They were built to astound the imagination. In the floating temple, the emperor demanded guests worship him as a deity. Alas, these wonders of engineering thought burned in 1944 during the war, when the museum where they were stored was bombed. But the most impressive example of ancient engineering was a siege that seems incredible even today. Imagine the task. You need to take the fortress of Masada, located on a 120-meter cliff in the middle of the desert. Assault ladders are useless. A siege could drag on for years. What to do? The Romans chose a solution that even today, in an era of powerful construction equipment, seems insane in its scale and audacity. They decided to build their own mountain to reach the fortress walls. The 10th Legion, Fretensis, and thousands of Jewish prisoners began constructing a giant siege ramp. Without excavators, bulldozers, or dump trucks, only primitive shovels, pickaxes, woven baskets for carrying earth and stones, and hardy mules. The height of this artificial ramp ultimately reached about 73 meters, with a base length of about 200 meters and a slope steepness of approximately 20 degrees, so heavy siege equipment could be moved along it. This is a volume of soil comparable to the contents of dozens of Olympic pools. moved by hand under the scorching desert sun and under constant fire from the fortress defenders. Every day, the defenders of Masada watched this man-made mountain grow. 2 months of hard labor in the desert, and the path upward was ready. Along this ramp, the Romans dragged up a helepolis, a 40-meter siege tower sheathed in iron plates. When the defenders understood the hopelessness of the situation, they chose death over slavery. The Romans burst into an empty fortress. Nearly 1,000 people had committed collective suicide. Triumph turned into tragedy, but the lesson remained. Roman engineering overcame any obstacle, and now shown the most revolutionary invention that changed the face of civilization. Roman aqueducts. Without them, Rome could never have become the huge metropolis we know it as. To be fair, the first aqueduct, Aqua Appia, was built back in 312 BCE, and the idea of bringing water from afar was not exclusively a Roman invention. But it was the Romans who brought aqueduct construction technology to incredible perfection and scale. What was the secret of their success? One key factor was the widespread use of a new, unique building material, Roman concrete, opus caementitium. Its base was volcanic ash called pozzolan. Around Rome and in other regions of Italy, there were quite a few extinct and active volcanoes, so there were no problems with raw materials. By mixing pozzolan with lime, water, and rubble, the Romans obtained concrete that possessed amazing properties. Roman concrete proved so durable that many grandiose structures built from it, the Pantheon, Colosseum, bridges, and of course, aqueducts, still stand today, 2,000 years later. Compare this to modern reinforced concrete, which often begins showing signs of deterioration after just 50 to 100 years. The main difficulty in aqueduct construction lay in the need for the most precise engineering calculations. Water flowed in them by gravity, so it was necessary to ensure a constant, though very small, slope along the entire length of the multi-kilometer route. Too steep a slope, and water could overflow the edges or destroy the channel walls with its speed. Too gentle, and the aqueduct could silt up or dry out. And this slope had to be maintained over dozens of kilometers, masterfully bypassing mountains, crossing deep valleys and gorges. For example, the famous Pont du Gard aqueduct in southern France, part of a 50-kilometer waterway to the city of Nîmes, has a total height difference of only 12.6 meters along its entire length. Such precision, achieved with primitive instruments like the chorobates, a long water level, and dioptra, a prototype theodolite, amazes even modern engineers. When uneven terrain was encountered along the aqueduct's path, the Romans didn't give up. If they needed to cross a valley, they built grandiose, multi-tiered arched bridges, the calling cards of Roman architecture. The arch became a real engineering breakthrough. It allowed spanning large openings, building light but incredibly strong structures, while saving building materials. If the valley was too deep or wide for a bridge, the Romans used inverted siphon technology. Simply put, this works on the principle of communicating vessels. Imagine a U-shaped tube. If you pour water into one arm, it will rise to the same level in the other. The Romans laid massive sealed pipes, most often lead, but sometimes stone or ceramic, along the valley slope, its bottom and the opposite slope, through which water flowed down under its own pressure and then rose on the opposite side, losing only a small part of its height due to friction. In the mountains, to shorten the route, they would unhesitatingly cut multi-kilometer incline tunnels through the thickness of rocks. By the beginning of the 2nd century CE, 11 main aqueducts daily delivered to Rome about 1 million cubic meters of clean drinking water. This was enough to supply 1,300 public fountains, many of which were true works of art, almost 900 public and private baths, thermae, and 144 public toilets, latrines. To understand the scale of costs, construction of just one aqueduct, Aqua Claudia, about 69 kilometers long, took 14 years and would cost today, by the most modest estimates, about $8 billion US, a sum comparable to the budget of modern megaprojects like building a new international airport. This complex system was maintained by a special government service, Curator Aquarum, with its staff of engineers, technicians, and workers. And what was the result of these titanic efforts? By the end of the 1st century CE, Rome's population reached and possibly exceeded 1 million people, a figure that no other city in the world could surpass until the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century. Thanks to aqueducts, almost every apartment building, insula, had water supply on the lower floors, and wealthy homes had sewerage too. This was a level of comfort that would have seemed an impossible fantasy for most European cities, even in medieval times. If you enjoyed this historical investigation and learned something new, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. This is the best reward for my efforts. Perhaps the main secret of incredible achievements lay in the fact that in the vocabulary of ancient engineers, when it came to great accomplishments, the word impossible was practically absent. The legacy left behind is not just ruins and artifacts, but an eternal reminder of the boundless possibilities of human genius.